Of Ukraine, Volodymyr Zelensky addressed members of Congress today in a long and at times moving speech. Among other things, Zelensky demanded that the United States shoot down Russian aircraft over his country. The White House has not yet agreed to do that, but things do seem to be moving very rapidly in that direction. Not long after Zelensky's address, Joe Biden announced the United States will send a total of at least $1 billion of weapons to Ukraine just this week. Members of Congress from both parties then emerged to say they don't think that's enough. Watch.
And the lethal drones, we need more of those in country as well. You know, people talk about a no-fly zone. They can create their own if we give them the military equipment and weapons.
But there's a lot I think we can do to help Ukraine shoot down those Russian aircraft, bring down those missiles.
A package that includes fighter jets and air defense systems to the Ukraine immediately, so that we can have a Ukrainian no-fly zone.
What we need to do is make sure that Ukraine has the equipment it needs in order to defend itself, particularly the skies.
I think there's a bipartisan movement right here. Provide them the MiGs. Provide them the planes where they can create a no-fly zone.
So things are changing very fast. For weeks, leaders in Washington told us that an American-backed no-fly zone in Ukraine would be unwise because it would amount to an act of war against a nuclear-armed Russia. As you can see, those views have evolved a lot. But in fairness, Congresswoman Maria Salazar got there first. Salazar is a longtime news anchor from Miami who a little over a year ago was elected to Congress as a Republican. She now sits on the Foreign Affairs Committee. A week ago, a reporter from the Gray Zone asked Salazar what she thought of a no-fly zone. Here's what she said.
Do you support a no-fly zone in Ukraine?
I support everything that has to do with punishing Vladimir Putin and helping the Ukrainians.
Wouldn't that mean direct conventional warfare with Russia?
I don't know what it will mean, but you know, freedom is not free.
So you don't know what a no-fly zone will mean? If you have to shoot down Russian planes, I mean.
Of course.
I don't know what it will mean, but you know freedom is not free. Now, we made fun of that answer last week when we first showed you that clip. But now what we mocked is the consensus in Washington. We don't know what's going to happen. We've got to do it immediately. That's the argument you're hearing. At this point, no one wants to say it out loud, but it is true. At this point, a shooting war with Russia seems inevitable. How could war with Russia not be inevitable? Virtually everyone with power is for it. We remain against it. We think that joining a war in Eastern Europe will hurt this country, though to be clear, when and if that war starts, we will be praying passionately for America's total victory. Unlike so many in the foreign policy establishment, we love this country above all, and we mean it. But in the meantime, while the United States is still technically at peace, we thought it'd be worth asking people who are calling for war if they have considered in detail what a war would mean for this country. Congresswoman Maria Salazar was gracious enough to accept our invitation to come on the show. We're grateful she did. She joins us tonight. Congresswoman, thanks so much for coming on.
Of course. Thank you for inviting me.
Well, yes. So since you have called for war with Russia, how do you think that war, once it begins, would play out?
I think that's a hypothetical question. I think that we should concentrate, Tucker, in what Zelensky asked Congress today.
I'm sorry. I'm sorry. I can't. No, and I'm in no way trying to cut you off. But I can't let you allot over that. You said we should shoot down Russian planes. That's of course war. Since you've called for that, and you are a member of Congress.
I think.
Well, you just said on the tape we played.
That was taken. Yeah, but that was taken out of context because I said, of course, that I know what that means. That interview was not very well conducted, and that's why I'm here, because I want to clarify my position. Okay. And my position is that we should not take the no-fly zone off the table. But before that, that's two. We need to do one. And one is to give Zelensky exactly what he's asking for. No troops on the ground. Let's give him the MiGs and the S-300s, what he needs to defend his own airspace. So he will create his own no-fly zone. And that's what I think we should have done months ago. It's embarrassing that this guy, this president, who is under the bullets, has come to Congress to beg for us to give him something that we should have done a long time ago.
Okay,
that's my position.
Let me be clear. When you say we should give President Zelensky what he's asking for, he demanded today, I think you were there, that the United States enforce the no-fly zone. But so you are for denying him that?
Well, but he also said, and then we can give you alternatives. So since we know that that should not be taken off the table, and I repeat it, I do believe that we should go to plan A, which is to give them all the military weapons that he is asking for.
Because well, I think a lot of people sympathize with that. Let me just say, I think a lot of people who saw President Zelensky's speech today and who've seen the atrocities in Ukraine feel deep sympathy for the Ukrainian people and want this to end. I'm certainly among them. But I'm wondering about the implications.
So then I am asking you, so then what should we do? Okay, all right, so what should we do then?
Always and everywhere, especially if we're the U.S. government or one of its elected representatives, act on behalf of the core interests of the United States government. It's really super simple. So if the United States is providing weapons...
Let me just tell you now that you said that.
Hold on.
Okay.
If the United States is providing weapons to one side in a war, how is that not participating in the war?
Listen, let me just backtrack and say that you say that we're supposed to be representing the American people. I represent District Number 27, where you have millions of Cuban Americans, and I'm representing what we think. We know that we acquired peace through strength. Look at what happened in 1960. Fidel Castro and JFK.
Stop. I'm sorry. I'm not going to take the anti-communist lecture from anybody because, of course, I agree with you.
No.
And by the way,
I'm just saying
I hope that you're not speaking for, quote, Cuban Americans, but for all Americans, because it's not a racial question. It's a question of
I'm talking about
national interest.
I'm representing District Number 27.
I understand. But I'm just saying, right, I got it. And I'm as against communism, I think, as anybody. But my question is, if we are providing weapons to one side in a war, I think it's fair to ask, maybe the other side would say that's an act of war against us. And if that happens, then what next? And to not think about that seems negligent, but since you're on the Foreign Affairs Committee, I know that you have thought it through. So tell me your views on what would happen next.
Tucker, we have been providing javelins and stingers and ammunition, and we're providing a lot of military armament. So what is the difference between that and the MiGs and the S-300s? What's the difference? I mean, you have to understand that we are, unfortunately, the United States has fallen into the Vladimir Putin's trap. He is the one dictating what we're going to do, what we're not going to do. He said, we do not want, we are imposing a no-fly zone over Ukraine, and we are
so we're letting Putin control our behavior. Okay, so that seems like a loss right there. Right. Okay, but let me just ask you, because we believe we don't need more evidence that Putin has bad intent, that he's evil. A lot of people believe he's crazy, including some informed people, including many Russians. So we know he's volatile, and we know that he's heavily... How many nuclear weapons, by the way, does Russia have? Do you know?
Many.
About 6,000 is the guess. One is enough, and that's a fair answer.
One is enough.
So are we concerned at all that he might use a nuclear weapon against the United States? Is that a concern? Is that something that you consider as you recommend these policies?
Of course that we're very concerned, and we're also concerned that he may be throwing a biological weapon against the Ukrainians within the next few hours because he cannot take Kiev as he thought he was going to. So of course that we are in confronting a dictator. But I think that we should put this into context, and I thank you very much that you're giving me the opportunity.
Of course.
If we believe in the free world, that this is just going to be the first or the last confrontation with a bad actor, we're in for a very big surprise. Because if we do not confront bad actors with strength, then we're going to have China and Russia and Iran and Fidel and Venezuela and Nicaragua. They're watching what we're doing.
But if needless to say, I've made that argument, for 30 years on television. The question is, are we doing it with all available risks known to the population in whose name we're doing it? So I'm asking you, what do you think the chances are, and I'm sure you've gamed this out as a member of the Foreign Affairs Committee, that Putin uses a nuclear weapon against the United States in response to this? What would you calculate the chances as?
Sure that we are taking that into consideration. And
but what do you think the likelihood? I mean, our viewers are, I'm sure, supporting you. I think most conservatives are on your side. But I just think they should know what the informed view of the likelihood of a retaliatory nuclear strike from Vladimir Putin is. What would you assess it as being?
And I repeat, that's a hypothetical question, and I
It's hardly a
believe
hypothetical.
that he will not take that step if, starting today, the Biden administration will send the message that we are in charge, that NATO is ready to confront him, and so are we. And that is the problem that I believe, I'm not sure if you share in my view, that you obtain peace. You obtain this. You can take all the power away from Putin if you show strength. To put it in more
do you believe
layman
that?
terms.
Do you believe that's true? So President Zelensky said yesterday that he is considering declaring that Ukraine would not join NATO in exchange for having Russian troops withdraw from his country. Would you describe, this is President Zelensky speaking, would you describe that
Zelensky can... Who am I to say what's correct and what's incorrect?
Would you accept? Would you?
Well,
I don't know. You okay? Hold on. Please don't dodge the question. Would that be an answer you'd be satisfied with if Zelensky made good on what he just suggested, that we'll agree to neutrality, we'll relinquish claims to Crimea, and the Russians leave? Would that be okay with you? Would you consider that an honorable exit, or would you consider it a display of weakness?
If Zelensky comes to the United States Congress and he says that this is the best path forward, we are no one to say something to the contrary. But I don't think he's going to say that. So we're creating scenarios here that are hypothetical.
No, we're not.
He
himself, you may not be following this closely, but he has said that multiple times. So of course that outcome would spare the deaths
of him.
Okay, but that would spare the deaths, and since I know you have great concern for the civilian population of Ukraine, that would spare the deaths of untold thousands and preserve the capital city from being destroyed. So would that be better than increasing the level of armed conflict in Ukraine? Which would be a better outcome?
That's for the Ukrainians.
What do you mean? You're an American policymaker who's imposing your views on Ukraine, and I'm asking you simply: would that be a better?
Why not
push? Well, of course you are. You're saying we need to send materiel, billions of dollars, arm the military, and I'm not criticizing your position. I'm just asking you: has it occurred that many lives might be saved if we were to encourage the peaceful solution that's already on the table? Are you doing anything in that direction?
If the Ukrainians want to go that route, they have the right to, and we are no one to say anything about it because they are the ones dying on the streets, and they're the ones under
and they certainly are. They certainly are dying. That's right. I don't notice any members of Congress or David Frum laying down their lives. It's the Ukrainians. But have you suggested that?
Tucker, I think that we have talked about this point enough. I also wanted you to give me the opportunity to explain to you about open borders because you said that I was in favor of open borders, and I talked to your production.
Well, you just called last month for the amnesty for tens of millions of people who came into this country illegally. But you did, because I read the legislation today.
No, I did not.
Actually, about 20 minutes ago I read it.
You have. Okay, I'm glad you did. You in sound bites. The Dignity Act, reform law, probably the first one that the GOP has presented in a long time. Right. It has one of the strongest border security measures in the history of the United States Congress.
Right, got it. But it also provides amnesty for tens of millions of people.
Amnesty is what we have now, Tucker. Amnesty is when you have more than 13 million illegals, listen to me, without paying for schools, for roads, or for hospitals. I am giving them dignity so they can start paying.
Now we're getting pretty deep into the talking points here. What you're doing is people who came over our border without permission are not being punished. They are instead being rewarded. And so you are applying a very different standard to Ukraine. I'm wondering if Russians fleeing Putin, do you believe should be allowed to start new and better lives in Ukraine? And I bet you'd say no, because you believe in Ukrainian nationalism, but not American.
I want to be rigorous. I'm talking about those people who have lived here for more than 5 years, that have not committed a crime, that have American children, and who are contributing to our economy. I want to give them something called dignity. And then
Right, got it.
redemption. I'm not talking about path to citizenship. I'm not talking about
Well, of course
amnesty.
you
I'm
are,
talking
and I
about,
wouldn't-
no, I'm not. And I don't want you to misrepresent what we did. And we worked for one whole year so we can solve. Just because this,
then let me
this
ask
bill
you. Let me
doesn't-
ask you.
You don't
and
agree.
our,
wait.
our
The
viewers can
fact
read the
that
bill.
you
Let me
don't
ask you a
agree-
simple question. You're for sending MiGs
The fact that
to
you don't
Ukraine.
agree with me doesn't mean that you have to misrepresent what's on the bill.
Okay. Well, look, I think you've said it yourself that people who came here illegally, tens of millions of them, would be allowed to stay. They would not be punished. They would be rewarded. Now, you think that's enhancing their dignity? By the way, I'm not against those people. I just can't help notice the contrast between your desire to send MiGs to Ukraine to preserve its borders, but not here. Should we send the U.S. military to the Mexican border, since you have admitted that tens of millions of people have come here illegally, that our borders are porous, they're not defended, they are open? Should we send the U.S. military to the Mexican border?
That is what I have created a whole plan so we can really seal the border. Because you know what? My community, the one that I represent, let me finish.
Let me finish. America,
the one that I represent.
Okay.
Listen, let me finish. Give me 15 seconds.
I shall.
Thank you. I have created a series of measures so we can secure the border. Because we, the Browns, the Hispanics, the Latinos in this country, are not in favor of open borders. The problem is that no one asks us. We want to live in the promised land, and we want to contribute, because you know very well that if we deport those 11 or 13 million, we may not have food by Friday.
Okay.
Why? Because the food supply chain...
Please, and I'm sorry, I think everyone understands this, that we have other supply chain issues. And by the way, I'm not attacking anybody living in this country legally or illegally. I'm asking a question about borders. All of us are appalled by the violation of Ukraine's borders. You don't seem as appalled by the violation of our borders by tens of millions of people. So let me ask you for the third time.
Sure,
you support
I do.
military
That's a misrepresentation.
equipment. Okay, then would you support the U.S. military securing the United States border tonight, or on the same timetable as sending MiGs to Ukraine? How about that?
That's hypothetical again.
No, it's a very straightforward question. What are you talking? You're a lawmaker.
No, it's not
hypothetical. What do you mean? Just say it. You're not for it, and you're for it in Ukraine, but not here.
You're giving me the whole segment, which is great, and I thank you very much.
But
Let's go back
me
to
if
my
I'm
bill.
Wrong. I don't want to misrepresent
I am
you.
correct.
I'm asking
All I am
you, would you don't support sending the U.S. military to the border? You don't. I just want our viewers to understand that you're for defending a foreign country, but not our own. And I think it's pretty clear.
I am
Please correct me if I'm wrong.
All the technology we could find so we can secure the border. We're all the military, the veterans, the police forces that we could hire so we can secure and seal the border, not only for people, but fentanyl and child sex traffickers. So I just told you, the bill is right there. There's technology. It's not so simple as to say you're going to put this or that. It's a series of technicalities, a series of technology that we need to use.
I get it.
That is for the border. All right.
I agree with your intent. If you're for securing the border, I'm totally on your side. And thank you for mentioning
what are you
going
to do? But let me ask you something.
Then let me just ask you a question. Can you see why Americans who support the Ukrainians' right to secure their own borders, I mean, I certainly do, most people do, all Americans do, can you see the frustration that they might feel listening to you, a lawmaker, say, yeah, there's a process, but when it happens in a foreign country, we have to send billions of the U.S. military, your sons, but we can't kind of do that here because why? I mean, can you sort of understand the frustration a little bit?
But I have never said that I want to send troops, our boys, to fight in Ukraine, because I don't think that Zelensky is asked. And we're sending at the same time Stingers and javelins and ammunitions, and we're sending a lot of things that are related to the military.
Seriousness? That's it. That's it. But you're not. You're not treating our border crisis with any level of the same seriousness.
And you see, you're misrepresenting.
Okay.
No, it's not true. You're misrepresenting this bill that is probably one of the best bills that has been presented when it talks about immigration reform law. I invite you to read it and invite me back so we can discuss it.
All right. Congresswoman, I don't agree with you, but I certainly appreciate your coming on. It's hard to get people to do that, and I appreciate that you did. Thanks.
Of course, invite me again so we can continue talking about immigration, which is one of the biggest problems we have. And if the GOP doesn't realize it, we will never win another election again.
Yeah. You could. Actually, I think Hispanic voters are trending Republican because they're for border security, the kind that you are not providing. Right.
No, it's not true. Once again, you're misrepresenting.
Of course it's true.
You are misrepresenting my bill.
Read it yourself. Thanks so much. Good to see you.